Okay, let's get started. So, welcome everyone to Scudic's pre-symposium lightning talk series. Um, as you all probably know, we've invited a few early career environmental science professionals to give lightning talks answering the question, why do I do the work that I do? And just a little introduction. As I was thinking about this talk series, I came across this survey that was recently published by the Yale Program on Climate Change Communications. And something that I noticed was not the amount of people who experience climate anxiety as reported by the study, but the fact that the rate was increasing very rapidly. Um, So, yeah, the number of people who feel climate anxiety, according to the survey, has almost tripled over the past 6 years. And this goes hand in hand with another statistic that I found that in the news outlet Grist that said Google searches for climate anxiety has soared by almost 600% since 2021. And it's really no wonder that people feel this way. I'm sure tweets and posts like this look fairly familiar. And I also sometimes feel this way. I mean, who doesn't? Um, and I really felt this way pretty strongly until I came to Scudic Institute as the 2023 Gero Fellow in Science Communications. And I witnessed firsthand all the amazing action that was taking place to actually do something about climate change. From soil hikes to birding conservation efforts to invasive species risk assessments, and this list isn't even close to being exhaustive. I've met so many people who've dedicated their careers to making real change happen instead of sitting in this paralyzing fear of climate disaster. And of course, no one wants to sit in feelings of climate doom. People want to help, but they're just not sure how. So, two of these pictures I just want to point out, the one in the top middle and the one in the bottom left. These photos are from a soil hike that was organized by Scudic, Friends of Acadia, and NPS, basically to aid in a restoration effort that's happening on the summits of Sargent and Penobscot Mountains. And basically, what the soil hike entailed was a bunch of community members volunteered to hike to the tops of these mountains with soil in their backpacks to help transport it to the summits. And people were so eager to help that some organizers had to tell people to take less soil up because everyone was so excited to help that they got a little overzealous. So, this is all to say that people want to help, and when they can, they turn out in droves. And science backs us up. So, this is the cover image from another study at Yale. It's all part of their same climate communications program that found that climate activism is actually quite protective. Climate activism actually helps people deal with detrimental health impacts of climate change anxiety. And the survey I referenced at the beginning of this backs this up too. It found that the vast majority of people who feel really alarmed about climate change are actually quite eager to do something about it, but they just don't know what. And that brings me back to the topic of this talk series. Um, it's one of the reasons why I invited these climate change professionals here today to hopefully inspire hope, change, and agency in the environmental community. And they all really inspire me how they've dedicated their careers to climate activism. And I hope that hearing about their inspiration and their drives I hope that will do the same for everyone else here. So, with that, I would love to pass the baton to Caroline Kanaski, who's our first speaker.
Thanks, Catherine. I had some Wi-Fi snafus earlier, so I am not as ready to share screen as I would have been, but I'll be
Okay,
there
we
in a
can,
moment.
if you're not ready, if any of the other speakers is
I
ready, we
think
can
I
swap.
think it'll be fine in
Okay.
a moment. So let's see. You guys can see that? Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. So, first, I want to thank Catherine so much for inviting me here. And when she sent me the invite, I immediately said yes once I saw the topic because as a scientist, I'm a PhD student. I don't have that much time to reflect on my motivations, or it's not something that I do all the time. So, it's really valuable to me to have this prompt to kind of think about why am I doing what I'm doing. And so, as I kind of got my thoughts together for today, I kind of boiled it down to three different elements. And so, what I'm showing you here on my first slide is some pictures of the pitch pine forests at Acadia National Park. And this is where I spent most of my summer. I was doing research as a second century stewardship fellow in the park. And actually, this weekend, I'll be continuing that work at Cape Cod National Seashore. But really, I'm trying to understand this one tree species that will be one day threatened by a very tiny tree killing beetle in this area. So we're trying to understand more about the park's resources so that more people can enjoy them. And then the next thing I want to talk about is these trees and how that motivates me. And so this tree species, the pitch pine, in my opinion, is kind of an underdog. It is not the tall, beautiful, straight white pine that we really commonly associate with Maine, but there's so much that we could dive into, so much more we can learn about trees and the environment and ecology and how things work together by studying these undesirable tree species. And this is really ecologically important, especially in Maine, because after the fires of 1947, which were kind of widespread across Maine, these trees grew back in abundance because they love fire. It opens up their cones and they grow in these sandy soils that don't have many nutrients. So, for all these reasons and more, I could probably convince you pitch pine is really cool and worthy of study. And when I think about climate change, there's so much about this world that we don't know. And if we can take some of that like childlike wonder of, wow, what's around us and what does it mean? What is it doing? How is it contributing to climate change? How is it helping to mitigate climate change? I think that we'll understand more and we'll be able to make different decisions as people. And then my second element that I figured out was kind of my childhood and what I like to do. So I like to be outside, both for work, even though that's really tough. Catherine knows that. She was out with me a couple of times this summer, but also for fun. And so I feel really grateful that I had people in my life when I was growing up who took me outside and kind of showed me, this is the environment we live in, and let's explore, let's be curious. And I like to pass that on to other people when I'm outside walking with them, when we're working together. And I really want to emphasize that being outside together really is meaningful to me. And so, as I was reflecting kind of over the past 10 years, I really noticed how being outside together can really spark and build relationships that being inside doesn't do quite the same way. And so, one particular example that I love is I helped to run a pre-orientation program for first year college students. And like imagine 12 students dropped off by their parents at college and then whisked away to a state park with no cell phone service for 3 days. And they had this incredible growth and vulnerability that I don't know if they would have had otherwise. This is the first team that we took out. And a lot of these students are still friends today. And that means so much to me. More recently, currently I'm teaching a class, and Tuesdays and Thursdays we're in the classroom, Fridays we're outside. And Friday is such a different experience than Tuesday, Thursday. Those students are quiet, they are lacking energy in the classroom, but outside they're chatting, they're exploring. There's so many ideas floating around that we just don't have in the classroom. So I like to see this all the time in different scenarios. Being outside together is really meaningful. And then my last element comes from my childhood, but more where I grew up. So I grew up in the anthracite coal mining region of Pennsylvania. And so I have information for an article here that I didn't write, but I think is really awesome to kind of illustrate the history of that landscape. And so as I reflect on how I experienced this landscape in northeastern Pennsylvania, um, sense of place becomes really highlighted to me. How we are interacting with our environment. What is the history of us on the landscape, both me as an individual, but also humans in general? And then what is the geological history? How did this coal get here? And what does that mean for us? And now I live in New Hampshire, and my environment is totally different. And I feel really grateful that, I don't have to worry about the stream in my backyard being bright orange because of acid mine drainage. And we have our own environmental problems here, but I can explore my environment in whatever way I want to, pretty much. And I don't have to worry about these detrimental impacts. And so, kind of what I want to close with is, through my work, I hope that we can all continue to enjoy exploring the world around us. Um, whether that's by ourselves, whether that's with our families for work, but as long as we can do that and continue to learn about ourselves and our environment, I will consider that a success. So I will leave you with a quick video of the stream in my grandma's backyard. This used to be really orange from acid mine drainage, and I always wanted to like jump in and swim. And now it's getting a little bit less neon, but it still reminds me of the place where I spent a lot of time, and I like to reflect on that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? I'll turn it back over before we move on to our next speaker.
We could do probably questions in the chat too.
Yeah, we could also do that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Caroline.
Yeah, I'll put my my contact info in the chat if anyone wants to connect afterwards. They don't have time right now.
Nice. So the next speaker is Alex Carey. I will pass it over to you now.
Hi. Hang on, let me share my screen. Okay. Is this okay? 1 second. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay. Well, hang on. Sorry, guys.
Take your time.
It's been a while. I've been in the field all summer, so it's been a minute since I was on my computer on like this kind of thing. Well, Catherine, do you know? Do I just? Oh, I see.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay.
Yeah, this is fine.
Okay, great. Well, hi everyone. I'm Alex Carey. I work at the Schoodic Institute as the Restoration Research Associate, which means that I lead the restoration crew as we move around the park, working on summit restoration, like Catherine mentioned, and invasive plant suppression, as well as like a phenology study that you'll all get to hear more about next week at the symposium. I'm from California, which is why I included a photo of me at a prescribed burn in the Sierras. That's like a big ecological restoration practice that we're trying to promote more in at an agency level in California. So yeah, I was really excited to hear what Caroline said because it really connected with me. I was one of those types of students that was in a field class and it really inspired me to pursue ecology. I got to explore lots of parts of Northern California in school, and I got to participate in field work during the summers for different academic projects that were happening. The middle is me doing salmon snorkel surveys in Mendocino, and on the right, I'm climbing a giant sequoia to collect water for a transpiration study. Basically, I think that these courses really defined who I was as an ecologist because getting to learn the plants and birds and ecological concepts firsthand in the field really made me connect more with these concepts than I think I would have if I just read them in a book. And also, I think in general, understanding what's around you helps you have a better sense of place, and you can connect more to your environment when you know the birds that are singing and you know what tree they're standing on. which I think is just important for young people in general, since the world's becoming really fragmented. But I got really interested in experimental design when I was at school, which is basically the method section of a research paper. And I realized that I wanted to pursue experiments that are in the field and take extra context from the surrounding environment instead of just working in um, or solely working in greenhouse experiments or solely working in the lab, which are both valuable on their own. I think combined it's like extra, the synergy is extra powerful for these experiments. After finishing my degree, I was an AmeriCorps volunteer scientist, and I got placed in an environmental nonprofit in the Sierras. And that got me really interested in the mountain world and alpine ecosystems, specifically seeing how these places are going to change, especially in California, as we get more droughts and as snowpack levels are shifting. Snowpack is the main way a lot of these alpine plants get their water. And as I fell in love with these environments and were inspired by these plants and ecosystems, I wanted to pursue um, research that understands what's going to happen to them. And that led me to become a botanist for a consulting firm doing vegetation surveys for PG&E, which is a big utility company in California. In California, utility companies have to go through environmental vegetation surveys in order to update their infrastructure, which allows a whole cottage industry of botany consultants going around and IDing all the plants plants, animals, if you're a wildlife biologist for these companies. But I was starting to really miss research doing this work. I wanted to know where this data was going, and I wanted to know that it was going to a place that shared my values and actually wanted to use this data to influence their management and create, climate research smart land management plans for their properties and their parks. And that led me to the Schoodic Institute, where I get to do that. And on the right is me and an NPS employee, Lundy Stowe, working on our restoration on Sargent. We're measuring out the areas that need to be restored. And on the left is the restoration crew at Schoodic. We're looking pretty cool on Baker Island. What I think is really important for, I guess, early career professionals is understanding the different industries you can go in. Like I got exposure to academia, the nonprofit world, and the private sector. And I think getting a lot of experience in all these places can help you make a more educated choice in what you want to do and what you want to pursue in your career. But yeah, happy to be at Schoodic now. Ooh, timer, sorry.
Thanks so much, Alex. I love the pictures. If anyone has any, does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay. Well,
There's
now,
one in the chat, Catherine. I don't know if we should answer it out loud.
oh yeah. So someone said, has it been hard to shift your work from West to East Coast?
It's definitely been interesting. I went to school and learned basically all of my botany in California and with those plants. And so now I've had to like rapidly learn not only the plants on the East Coast, but all of the different, I think, like special challenges that these systems are undergoing. Um, the increasing amount of storms due to climate change is definitely impacting our work, which I'm not really used to because it doesn't really rain where I'm from. So that's been a fun update.
Oh, Caroline.
Yeah, I had a quick question. That was really cool, Alex. It was really neat to hear about like the Sierra's work and the different ecosystems you worked in. Did you have like a defining moment where you decided like I don't want to work in this consultant botanist role anymore?
That's a good question. Um, I think yeah, I think when we finished our botanical surveys at the end of the summer and we were finishing up our identification of the samples, everyone was like, all right, and now we're pretty much done because we're just going to write a report and we're going to move on to the next project. And I had all these questions about the landscape change that we saw and how these these rare plants were in one part and not the other. And I think I was just frustrated that that's where our work ended as a consultant. We don't get to actually analyze why things are happening or how they're going to change.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, really interesting. Now we were going to move to Brooke Goodman.
Okay, hi. I'm gonna get my screen shared. Okay. Did I do that successfully?
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. Okay, my name is Brooke Goodman. I am the Jarrow Fellow in Science Research at the Schoodic Institute, and I will be chatting about why I do the work that I do. So I am a big bird person. I have been since high school when I started volunteering with my local Audubon Society, and I took that passion into my undergraduate degree. So I got my degree in zoology at SUNY Oswego in New York. And while I was there, I did a lot of research on northern cardinals, on a ton of different aspects of their biology. I specifically focused on the sound recording and what a northern cardinal song tells us about this specific male. And so I got a lot of fieldwork experience doing that and research experience. I briefly worked for the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute in Montana, studying the breeding birds of the Great Plains. And while I was out there, what I realized about myself was that I like water because there was no water there. So while I was looking for jobs after undergrad, I wanted to be back near the ocean. And so that's how I landed at the Schoodic Institute, working on our bird conservation programs. And so one thing that really motivates my work is conservation specifically. And so birds are in a really tricky place right now. So a recent paper published in the journal Science told us that 1 in 4 birds have disappeared since 1970. So we're seeing really intense population declines. And this is for a lot of different reasons, but a really big factor is the degradation, loss, and general fragmentation of bird habitat throughout the country. And so in some places, we have kind of learned the error of our ways and we want to mediate the damage that we've done in the past. But good intentions do not equal good outcomes. So a really big question in the field of restoration right now is trying to put a number to our restoration efforts and quantify the impacts that our work has on the species that currently occupy that land and also historically occupy the land that we are trying to restore. And so it can be really hard to answer these questions because they're often asked on really large spatial and temporal scales. So a restoration project can be many decades long. It often is because these things don't happen super quickly. So how can we consistently monitor something like the bird community over that time period? And so the answer from the bioacoustics field is passive acoustic monitoring, which I got into in my undergrad work with northern cardinals and have continued to use at my time in Schoodic. So pictured here is a passive acoustic monitor. So I can deploy this recording unit in the field for months at a time, and I can pick it up, and during that time, it will have recorded whatever I tell it to. So it can record 24 hours or just the morning, and it allows us to collect huge amounts of data compared to its traditional kind of twin, a point count, which gives us usually around a 10-minute snapshot of the bird species in an area, but you can miss a lot of species in 10 minutes. And birdsong tells us a lot about the resources available in a habitat. So different birds prefer different things, different insects, or different nesting sites. And as the species composition of an area changes, we can infer how our restoration efforts are impacting the area and the birds. And so the development of machine learning technology has greatly increased the scale of bioacoustics. So something many of you are probably familiar with is Merlin Bird ID. So this is an app where you can just open your phone, hit record, and it'll do its best to identify the bird species that it's hearing. And so while this is a phone app, there are similar computer programs available that can produce similar results, but for huge amounts of audio data. So this has greatly increased the amount of knowledge we can pull from our recordings. So we're applying these concepts to the Great Meadow wetland. And so, as many of you know, the Great Meadow wetland has been greatly altered through the years by human activity. And so things like the construction of ditches and roads and different sized culverts that are maybe too small or too low have caused these really intense flooding and drought events through the meadow. And birds, of course, are feeling this as it's not the natural hydrology that they have been used to in the meadow for so long. And the plants are also feeling it. So there are a lot of disturbance specialist species occupying the wetland, while maybe historically we would prefer to see some wetland obligate species. So the recent bipartisan infrastructure bill provides the funding to do some restoration work at Great Meadow, like replacing these faulty culverts and restoring some of the plant life. So we spent the summer deploying recording units at Great Meadow and also Gilmore Meadow as a kind of comparison wetland that has a more natural hydrology and more wetland obligate species. And so this kind of comes back to why I do this. We are creating the data set that will eventually answer the question of how our restoration efforts have impacted the bird community at Great Meadow. And I really enjoy being in a field like bioacoustics, where every month there is some new huge development in the technology that allows us to ask and answer so many new questions. And an amazing thing about bioacoustics is that we're collecting all of this audio data and it stays kind of like a museum specimen. You can always revisit it and ask a new question or perform a new analysis. So establishing this baseline of data can help us answer these really long-term questions like, how will Great Meadow be changed in 20 years after our restoration efforts? And I just find that really fascinating and a really unique way to contribute to bird conservation that historically was not possible. So just asking and answering those new questions. So yeah, that's why I do what I do.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm going to turn it over for any questions or comments.
I want to
And
know, so sorry, Catherine.
go for it.
I want to know from Brooke, what is your favorite bird that we can find in Acadia?
Oh my gosh, this is a hard question.
You can make top two.
No, so I have a good, okay, so I think spruce grouse is a really interesting bird that you can find in Acadia, and it's on my mind because I've been trying to see it a lot and I still have not seen it. So it's just such a cool bird, and I am kind of just, it's on the forefront of my mind a lot because I'm consistently failing to find it. But spruce grouse is so interesting, and just so many different seabirds that are just so fun to see since we're right on the coast.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brianna Cunliffe. Did I say your last name correctly? Okay, wonderful.
Yes. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sweet. All right, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Cool. All right, so hi everybody. My name is Brianna Cunliffe, or Brie, like the cheese, and I am currently an Island Institute Fellow serving as the Community Engagement and Resilience Coordinator at A Climate to Thrive, which is a community-driven climate solutions nonprofit based on Mount Desert Island. It's a picture of my amazing team of ladies. And I was really, like a lot of y'all, excited to see the theme of this talk because it's something that I think and speak about all the time when it comes to community-driven climate work is the why behind what we're engaging in. And I kind of see the intersection that I inhabit as this place where storytelling meets community and climate action. And so I grew up in a small coastal city called Wilmington, North Carolina. I grew up with hurricanes as a regular part of my life, but seeing them worsen in my lifetime. And I grew up with a lot of different passions that shot in different directions. I would finish a book all in one sitting up in the branches of an old pine tree in my backyard because I was so fascinated with storytelling, but also so compelled by the natural world around me. I loved messy science fair experiments and campfire building and solving tricky math problems. And these sort of divergent passions and paths didn't really find a focus until I had a moment of reckoning during my very first week far away at college here in Maine at Bowdoin College when a hurricane devastated my hometown. It turned the peninsula of our city into an island, knocked out electric and phone lines. I didn't hear from my parents for 3 or 4 really long feeling days. And so we're very fortunate to have emerged as a family, safe from that experience. But that was sort of the moment that I knew where my life's work would be, right, in addressing the climate crisis that was worsening storms, that wasn't just impacting some hypothetical people of the future, but that was really having a tangible impact on the people and places that we love in the present tense. And as I started to explore this new dedication, I discovered that I was in a really unique position to be able to pursue all of these different passions and gifts that I had discovered and leverage them to take climate action in a way that also sustained me and energized me and allowed me to do all of these things that I loved. In my current role, I get to tell so many stories. I get to have conversations with community members of all ages about their fears and their concerns, but also their hopes for the future. I get to envision a different world collaboratively with them through planning work and then tell that story to federal and state funding opportunities through the writing of grants and community educational events. I get to talk to amazing scientists and economists and learn how to solve the many thorny problems that we're facing. And I get to spend a lot of time outside in Acadia's beautiful landscapes, reminding myself why I do the work that I do. And when I think about community-driven climate action, which is what A Climate to Thrive focuses on, I think of this idea that we start with the values that we share. And then we move from that to contextualizing that in the place that we inhabit, in the changes that we're seeing. And we talk about what we hope for and what we fear, and we see one another's ideas. And we have to move, as one of my mentors always tells me, at the speed of trust. But then we can arrive at this place where we're aligned on the actions that we're taking and we can sort of sustain our momentum moving forward. And I think that, at least for me, that is profoundly place-based work. It's community work, and it's all about stories and building meaningful relationships with one another. And I think that's how this work scales up. So I'll leave it there for the moment. I'm happy to put my email in the chat if anyone would ever like to connect about climate action things on MDI or beyond.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Again, going to turn it over for any questions or comments. Okay. And then one last thing is I have a discussion question that I will pull up. If I can find it. Okay. So to wrap this all up, I thought a question I would like to pose to all of you is, can anyone share, or would anyone like to share, a personal story about a action effort that they've witnessed in their community? So I will turn that over to whoever would like to share.
Love to share something. So my name's Zoe. I'm also a Gero Fellow at the Skudik Institute, but I focus on environmental science, environmental science education, I should say. Sorry, my brain is still foggy this morning. But I work with the Skudik Education Adventure program, which is like a collaboration between Skudik Institute and the National Park Service, and we offer a residential field trip for middle schools, mostly from around Maine, but also from other states. And they can come here and learn about different aspects of environmental science and like environmental chemistry and exploring our tide pools and weather and climate and stuff like that. And every time that we have a school come, I'm like always shocked at how much information these kids retain and how much they know coming into it. And I've worked with kids for a long time, so it's like hard to surprise me, but it's really encouraging how much care these kids demonstrate for their environment just naturally. And something that I'm encouraged by, because education is chronically underfunded, and especially environmental education. So I'm glad that Skudik has this opportunity for kids. And I'm also glad that the state of Maine has shown, or the governor of Maine has shown like an initiative to increase access to outdoor education in the form of like field trips, just like the SEA program. And I still think there's a lot of progress to be made, because outdoor education should be, in my opinion, an everyday sort of thing. Not every kid grew up in an outdoorsy family or with access to a park that they felt safe going to and exploring. Especially as we like delve into the interdisciplinarity of issues that people face in our society, it is very unequal in our access to the environment. So I think that we still have a lot of progress to be made, but Maine is at the forefront of that progress, and giving funding to increase access to outdoor education is not something everyone will do. So I'm really encouraged by seeing that, and I encourage people to get involved by voting however you wish, but ideally to support actions like this, because these kids are incredible and deserve time outdoors where they can feel safe and they can learn. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Zoe. That is so important, and thanks for sharing. Does anyone else have a community-driven climate effort that they would like to share?
I have something that's it's pretty new actually. And so I just wanted to follow up with what Zoe said. You know, I also see so much like hope and inspiration in my students. I have a pretty small class right now, but you know, they're all coming from different places and different perspectives, and seeing their care from for the environment from all those different perspectives it's really enriching every time that we talk about these kinds of ideas. But so I said before, I'm living in New Hampshire right now. And my town is doing a community power initiative. So basically, you'll automatically be enrolled in this new partially renewable energy plan unless you opt out. So, you know, you can start off with 25% renewable, you can bump up to 50 or 100, depending on how much you can pay. And it's so seamless. And that's the best, to me, that's the best part, is that I don't have to do anything, and automatically I will be using more renewable energy sources to heat my apartment or put the lights on. And, as hopefully I graduate and make more money, I will absolutely bump up my renewable percentage. And you can change that every 3 months too. So really a lot of flexibility to allow people to make the choices that is right for them. But also, if you don't do anything, if you don't say, no, I don't want Dover Community Power, you save money. It's cheaper than what we already get. So it's like, to me, that's like the triple bottom line, right? We were looking for things that are more sustainable, more economic, and are helping the earth. So yeah, that's given me a lot of hope. And it's been no one's been mad about it on our town Facebook group or anything. So seeing the reception and the clear information that my city has put out about this, it's been really encouraging.
That's so cool. Do you know? Oh, Brooke, go for it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
I just wanted to also bring up community climate action, kind of specific to birds, obviously. There's a really interesting program coming out of like Cornell that you can get involved with through like your local Audubon Society called Climate Watch. And so it's essentially a program where they send you out to bird kind of specific locations in your area that are maybe not often birded, but just for a specific species that is predicted to feel some intense impacts because of climate change. So where I'm from in New York, the focus species was eastern bluebirds, and just going out and looking for eastern bluebirds specifically. And one awesome thing about it was that you really didn't even have to be a birder to get into it, because you only needed to know how to identify a single species. So you only need to be able to identify some vocalizations and what an eastern bluebird looked like. So there was a really kind of low entry point. So a lot of people who weren't super familiar with birds or climate change research were getting involved because of that kind of low entry point. And it was just kind of an awesome way to get people involved and get people to start thinking about how climate change is impacting different sensitive species. And it's also just kind of fun to bird somewhere new and look for a specific species. So that's one program that has given me a lot of hope to see how interested people are when we do it.
Cool. And in a similar vein, maybe this is a good opportunity to plug that on Saturday, October 14th, so the Saturday, Schoodick's offering a open house style celebration of migration at Schoodick Point from 8 to noon, if anyone is interested. I know Brooke will be there, and Zoe. Brianna.
Cool. I just am really loving hearing everyone's stories, and this kind of has threads of all of them. I get super excited about smart policy design, and also I think that when young people are given the chance to engage with these issues, they have these phenomenally wonderful ideas. So a Climate Tribe has done a lot with solar on Not Desert Island, and I think the early phases of that project were focused on individual households adopting solar on their rooftops. But even though that's a lot more economical than it used to be in Maine and definitely saves money over the long term, there are barriers, right? Renters, for instance, can't usually take advantage of those kinds of things. And if you don't have the capital to get a loan for a solar panel, that's also a barrier. And so we ended up exploring this model that we were actually encouraged to by a group of high school and college interns that we had worked with that now is in really its far along stages of exploring cooperatively owned solar arrays. So in the same way that you're a member of a food co-op, you're a member of a small scale electrical co-op. Here on MDI, that looks like, right, a medium-sized array on a boat shed roof that generates enough electricity to power 30 or so households. You buy your share in the cooperative solar array and you have a voting membership in that array. So it's a democratic way for you to be able to own your own energy, even if you don't have the wherewithal to put your individual panels on your individual roofs. So that's something that I'm always really, really excited to be moving closer to being a reality.
Wait, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have a climate effort that they would like to share? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciated it. And yeah, if you guys have any further questions or would like to like continue this discussion with any one of our speakers, feel free to reach out and we can make that connection happen. So yeah, thank you all again for coming, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their Wednesday.
Thanks
Thanks,
for organizing, Catherine.
Thanks, guys.